The operating room door sealed shut. The Navy SEAL on the table declared dead, but his canine partner refused to leave. For 6 hours, the dog stood guard. Muscles locked, eyes blazing. Anyone who stepped close got the same warning. Bared fangs, a growl that cut through bone. This wasn't fear. This was duty. When surgeons tried moving the body, the canine lunged, security rushed in, weapons raised, orders shouted. "He's gone," someone said. But the canine planted himself between his handler and the door like he knew something they didn't. That's when she walked in. A rookie nurse, blonde, quiet, no rank, no authority. She didn't yell, didn't touch him. She knelt beside the SEAL and removed her glove. On her hand, faded but unmistakable, a dagger tattoo with the number 7. The canine froze instantly. He sat, lowered his head, pressed it against the SEAL's chest. Outside, a black SUV screeched to a stop. A Navy SEAL commander stepped out, coffee in hand. Then he saw her through the window. The cup slipped, shattered. Coffee everywhere. His face went white. Want to know what happens next and who she really is? Stay until the end. Before we begin, take 2 seconds to comment and subscribe. These medical stories only survive because people like you stay with them till the end. The operating room doors were sealed, red lights glowing above them like a warning no one wanted to read. Inside, a Navy SEAL lay motionless on the table, chest still, skin cooling. The monitor above him showed a flat, unforgiving line that had already been confirmed by 2 surgeons and a senior anesthesiologist. Time of death had been called. Notes were being dictated. Gloves were being peeled off. And still, no one could move the body because sitting beside the table, perfectly still, was the military canine. Not lying down, not pacing, sitting, back straight, muscles locked, eyes fixed forward like a guard posted at a doorway only he could see. His leash lay untouched on the floor, slack as if even gravity knew better than to pull him away. The first nurse who tried to step closer didn't make it 3 feet. The dog's head snapped up, teeth flashed. A deep warning growl rolled out of his chest. Not wild, not panicked. Controlled, trained, deliberate. She froze slowly, backed away. Someone muttered, "He's just confused." The dog answered by slamming his paws into the tile and barking once. Sharp, explosive, a sound that cracked through the sterile air like a rifle shot. 6 hours passed. 6 hours of arguments, phone calls, and protocol manuals being quoted by people who had never once dealt with a military working dog guarding a fallen operator. The canine never ate, never drank, never shifted position. The moment anyone stepped within arm's reach of the SEAL, the dog rose, muscles coiled, teeth bared. When surgeons finally tried to wheel the table toward the door, the canine lunged. 2 security guards rushed in. Both were trained. Both were confident. Neither slowed him down. One guard hit the wall hard enough to knock the breath out of his lungs. The other went down clutching his forearm, shock written across his face as blood seeped between his fingers. Doctors scattered. Nurses pressed themselves against counters. Someone screamed for the police. "Get that dog out of here. He's a threat. We can't leave a body unattended like this." The canine planted himself between the SEAL and the exit, growling low, eyes never leaving the table, not protecting a corpse, standing watch. That was when the order came down from administration. Quiet, cold, and final. If we can't move the dog, we neutralize him. A security supervisor raised his weapon, hands trembling despite years on the job. He didn't want to do this. No one did. But protocol didn't care about loyalty or grief or instinct. The door to the O opened and a rookie nurse stepped inside. She didn't belong there. Everyone could see that immediately. Blonde hair pulled back into a simple tie, scrub slightly oversized. Her badge hung crooked, clipped in a way that said she hadn't yet learned the unspoken rules of presentation. She was assigned to vitals, paperwork, the kind of nurse people forgot the moment she left the room. She didn't raise her voice, didn't shout orders, didn't look at the weapon, didn't even look at the dog. She walked past the security guards like they weren't there. "Miss, get back." Someone hissed urgently. She didn't. The canine turned toward her, teeth bared, body surging forward in a blur of muscle and motion. And then he stopped. Not gradually, not cautiously, instantly. She knelt beside the SEAL, close enough that anyone watching held their breath, waiting for the moment the dog would strike. Instead, she reached down and removed her glove. On the back of her hand, faded but unmistakable, was a tattoo most people wouldn't recognize, a dagger, and beneath it, the number 7. The canine's entire posture changed. His ears lowered, his breathing slowed. He Saturday. Then carefully, almost gently, he lowered his head and pressed it against the seal side. The room went silent. Not the awkward silence of uncertainty, the heavy silence of people realizing they had just misunderstood everything. One of the surgeons whispered, "What? What does that mean?" The nurse didn't answer. She wasn't looking at them. She was watching the monitor. Everyone else had written it off as interference earlier. A flicker, electrical noise, nothing worth noting. She stared at it longer than anyone else had. Then she leaned in closer, eyes narrowing, not with hope, but with calculation. Outside the hospital, a black SUV rolled to a stop. Another, then another, the engines cut almost in unison. A Navy SEAL commander stepped out, coffee cup still in his hand, jacket unbuttoned, expression tight with urgency. He'd been briefed on the dog, on the delay, on the problem inside the O. He was not prepared for what he saw when the doors opened. The K9 sitting at attention, the SEAL still on the table, and a woman kneeling beside him, glove off. The commander stopped walking. The coffee slipped from his hand. It hit the floor and shattered. Dark liquid spreading across the tile. No one spoke. He didn't look at the dog. Didn't ask about the body. Didn't question the lockdown. His eyes were locked on the tattoo and on the woman wearing it because he had seen that dagger before. In a place no one talked about in a unit without names. In a war that officially never happened. Behind him, security waited for orders. Inside the O, the nurse finally spoke. Not loudly, not dramatically. "Give me 2 minutes," she said. "And don't touch him." A surgeon started to object, then stopped when he realized the commander had raised his hand. The monitor flickered again. This time it didn't stop. And as the line twitched just barely enough to make one exhausted doctor suck in a sharp breath, the K9 lifted his head. Eyes locked on the nurse like he had been waiting for her all along. The commander took one step forward. And that's when everything they thought they knew about the rookie nurse and the SEAL on the table began to unravel. The monitor didn't scream. It didn't blur alarms or flash warnings. It simply twitched. A tiny uneven pulse rippled across the flat line, so subtle that 3 people in the room missed it completely. One anesthesiologist noticed and shook his head, already dismissing it as artifact. Another surgeon turned away, reaching for the chart to confirm what had already been written. But the rookie nurse didn't move. She leaned closer, eyes locked on the screen, jaw tightening just slightly. Not hope, not panic, recognition. The canine lifted his head at the same moment, not barking, not growling, watching. "I need suction," the nurse said quietly. The words cut through the room sharper than any shouted command. A junior resident looked around, confused, then glanced at the commander standing just inside the doorway. The commander didn't speak. He simply nodded once. Suction was passed. The nurse adjusted the SEAL's head position by a few centimeters. An angle so precise it looked accidental to anyone who didn't know better. Her fingers pressed gently. Along the side of his neck, counting silently. 2 seconds. 3. "There," she murmured. The pulse flickered again. Stronger. One surgeon swore under his breath and leaned in. "That's impossible. He's been down too long." She didn't argue. She checked the pupils, the skin tone, the temperature. Details most people stopped caring about after time of death had already been declared. "He's not gone," she said. "He's locked." Locked. Another doctor snapped. "That's not a diagnosis. It is where he comes from." No one knew what to say to that. The canine stood and repositioned himself closer to the table, body aligned with the SEAL's torso, ears forward, not anxious. "Ready." The nurse reached for a syringe. A senior surgeon grabbed her wrist. "You are not authorized." She met his eyes for the first time and something in her expression made him let go. Not fear, not defiance, certainty. "This isn't a hospital problem," she said evenly. "It's a battlefield shutdown. Induce trained." He did it to survive. The room went still. The commander stepped closer now. Close enough that the smell of antiseptic mixed with the faint scent of coffee still clinging to his uniform. His gaze moved from the SEAL's face to the nurse's hands, then to the tattoo again. "SEAL Team 7, he said quietly. She didn't look at him. She injected. The monitor jumped once. Twice. A ragged, shallow breath pulled itself into the SEAL's chest like air being dragged through broken glass. A sound half the room would remember for the rest of their lives. One of the surgeons staggered back, hand over his mouth. "Oh my God." The canine wed soft, relieved, and pressed his forehead against the table again, tail still, body trembling now that the watch was nearly over. The nurse adjusted the oxygen. "Check the line." Her movements were efficient, practiced, stripped of emotion. "He'll crash again," she said. "When he comes out." As in, the anesthesiologist began. As in, he's going to relive the worst day of his life all at once. The commander closed his eyes briefly. He knew exactly what she meant. They moved fast after that, faster than protocol, faster than paperwork. Orders were given without debate. Equipment appeared without explanation. The O transformed from a place of finality back into controlled chaos. And through it all, the rookie nurse stayed at the SEAL side, not directing, not commanding, anchoring. At one point, a doctor leaned close and whispered, "How do you know all this?" She didn't answer. Because the truth wasn't something you explained to civilians. It was something you carried or buried. As they stabilized him, the SEAL's body began to tense. Muscles tightened, his jaw clenched. A low sound escaped his throat. Halfway between a breath and a warning, the canine stiffened immediately. "He's coming back wrong," the nurse said. "Clear the room." "Clear." A resident echoed now. The commander barked the order this time. People moved. The SEAL's eyes snapped open. They weren't seeing the O. They were seeing dust, fire, movement in the dark. He thrashed, restraints creaking, strength returning in violent surges. The monitor screamed now, heart rate spiking, blood pressure surging. Contact left, he shouted hoarsely. "Get down." The canine barked once, not aggressive, but sharp, grounding. The nurse leaned close, placing one hand flat on the SEAL's chest, steady, unflinching. "You're not there," she said firmly. "You're inside. You're alive. You're not alone." His breathing hitched. Sweat poured down his face. "You hear the dog." She continued. "That means you made it." His eyes flicked toward the canine. Recognition sparked. The thrashing slowed. The moment passed like a wave, finally breaking on shore. The SEAL sagged back against the table, breath ragged, but real. The room exhaled. A surgeon whispered, "She just took him back." The commander stepped closer, voice low. "You were listed KIA." She finally looked at him. "Paper," she replied. A beat passed between them, heavy with things neither of them would ever say out loud in this room. Outside the O, word was already spreading. A SEAL pronounced dead. A military dog refusing to leave. A rookie nurse doing things no rookie should know how to do. Judgment came quickly. She overstepped. She got lucky. She broke protocol. Inside, the nurse washed her hands slowly, methodically, blood swirling down the drain. She didn't look up when a young nurse beside her whispered, "They're saying you shouldn't have done that." She dried her hands and answered calmly, "They weren't there." Before she could step away, the commander spoke again. "Why are you here?" She considered the question. "Because hospitals are quieter than war zones," she said. "And people don't ask who you were, only what you can do." The canine lay down for the first time since arriving, finally resting. As order began to return, the nurse moved a step back into the background to let the hierarchy reassert itself. But before she could disappear, one of the older nurses caught her arm gently. "Hey," she said. "Whatever they say out there, you saved him." The rookie nurse nodded once. Then she did something she hadn't done all night. She hesitated because down the hall, raised voices were growing louder. Administrators, military brass, questions that didn't want answers, only control. And she knew the next phase wouldn't be about saving a life. It would be about who she was and whether the truth could stay buried. Before the door swung open and the consequences walked in, she glanced once more at the SEAL on the table and the canine at his side. If you believe the quiet ones are often the strongest, comment, never judge. The questions started before the blood on the floor had fully dried. They came in clipped sentences and controlled tones spoken just outside the operating room by people who wore authority the way others wore uniforms. Hospital administration, legal, military liaison officers who didn't introduce themselves and didn't need to. The rookie nurse heard them all without turning around. She stood at the sink, washing her hands for the third time, methodical, slow. Red swirled down the drain and vanished. She kept her eyes on the water, not because she was afraid to look up, but because looking up meant engaging, and engagement meant exposure. Behind her, the Navy SEAL commander spoke in a low voice, firm but careful. He was misdiagnosed. That's on us, not her. A sharp reply followed. She violated protocol. She saved his life. That's not the point. The nurse dried her hands and finally turned. The room quieted in that strange way it does when someone unassuming becomes the center of gravity without asking to be. Sir, one of the administrators began, forcing a polite smile. We are going to need a statement, she nodded once. I'll write one. Not that kind, the man said. We need to know how you knew what to do. She met his eyes. I've seen it before. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. The canine stirred at the sound of her voice, lifting his head slightly, ears flicking toward her before settling again. The seal lay unconscious now, stabilized, chest rising and falling with assistance. Alive, but fragile. The commander watched the dog, then the nurse. You didn't just stop him, he said quietly, pitching his voice so only she could hear. You recognized him and he recognized you. She didn't deny it. I thought you were dead, he added. So did everyone else. That was the point, wasn't it? She paused. Not long, but long enough. Yes. The commander leaned back slightly, crossing his arms. They're not going to let this go. Yeah, I know. Across the room, a young doctor whispered to another. She didn't even flinch when he came back swinging. Did you see that? Yeah, the other replied like she'd done it 100 times. The nurse heard them both. She had done it more than that. The commander motioned toward the hallway. Walk with me. She hesitated only a second, then followed, passing through the double doors into the quieter corridor beyond. The noise faded behind them, replaced by the low hum of machines and distant footsteps. He stopped near a window overlooking the ambulance bay. Black SUVs still parked below. SEAL Team 7, he said again, this time not as a question. She stared out at the lights reflecting off the pavement. That's what they called it. They told us your unit was wiped out. It was. And you. I survived. He exhaled slowly. You were the medic. Yes. Silence stretched between them, thick with things neither of them had permission to say. They never used names, he continued. Just call signs, numbers, roles, she nodded. That way if someone broke, they couldn't give anything away. And if someone died, he said softer now, there was no name to mourn. Her jaw tightened. That dog, the commander went on, he was trained with your unit. He was conditioned to recognize markers, stances, body language, and ink, she said, even faded. He looked at her hand. You kept the tattoo? Barely, but he saw it. Yes. The commander turned fully toward her. Now, do you know what happens if command realizes you're alive? I do. They'll want answers, reports, debriefs. They'll want to put me back where I came from. He didn't argue because they both knew it was true. Down the hall, raised voices echoed again. Someone demanding access, someone else refusing. They're arguing over jurisdiction, the commander said. Hospital versus military. She allowed herself a small humorless smile. They always do. He studied her for a moment. Why are you here? Really? She didn't answer right away. Because this place, she said finally, is supposed to be about saving lives without asking who deserves it. And yet, he said they're already asking. She nodded. Inside the operating room, the canine stood abruptly, ears pricked, body tense. The nurse felt it before anyone told her. He's crashing, she said, already turning back. They rushed in together. The monitor numbers were dropping fast now, blood pressure falling, heart rate erratic. He's bleeding internally, a surgeon shouted. We missed something. No, the nurse said. It wasn't there before. She moved to the SEAL's side, hands steady, eyes scanning. A faint tremor rippled through his body. Neurogenic shock, she said, delayed. That's not possible. It is if he was trained to suppress it. The room moved on instinct now, not hierarchy. She adjusted fluids, changed angles, called for medications before the numbers demanded them. The canine paced once, then settled again, eyes never leaving the SEAL. How do you know? A doctor demanded. She didn't look up. Because I've watched it happen in the dirt with no monitors at all. The commander watched the room shift around her, authority bending toward competence without realizing it. A resident whispered, she's running this. And she was. The SEAL stabilized again, barely. A breath passed through the room, but relief was short-lived. The doors opened. Two men in pressed uniforms stepped inside, faces hard, eyes sharp. One carried a folder thick with red tabs. "Which one of you is the nurse?" the taller one asked. She straightened slowly. "I am." He looked her over, gaze lingering on her hands. "You weren't on our roster." "I wasn't supposed to be." He glanced at the commander. "Sir, with respect, we need her outside now." The commander didn't move. "Sir," the man pressed. "She stays," the commander said flatly. "This is a classified situation." "So is she," the man's eyes narrowed. "Do you know who she is?" "Yes," the commander replied. "And so do you." The silence that followed was heavy. The nurse met the man's gaze calmly. "If you pull me out now," she said, "he dies." A beat. Another. The man cursed under his breath and stepped back. 5 minutes. He snapped. "That's all you get." The nurse turned back to the table. 5 minutes was more than she'd had in Afghanistan. She worked quickly, efficiently, with the calm precision that only came from knowing exactly how little time really meant. As she finished, she felt the weight of eyes on her, not just from the room, but from the pasting in. The commander leaned close. "They're going to open your file." "I know. And once they do, they'll remember who I was," she said. "And who you still are." She didn't respond because the truth was heavier than any rank. As the SEAL's vitals steadied again, the nurse finally stepped back, exhaustion catching up to her in a way adrenaline had delayed. The canine rose and pressed his head briefly against her leg just once, then returned to his post. The men with the folder stepped aside, speaking quietly into their radios. Outside, engines started. The commander looked at her, expression unreadable. "This isn't over." She met his gaze. "It never is." Down the hall, footsteps approached. Fast, purposeful, too many to ignore. And as the door swung open once more, the rookie nurse realized the next battle wouldn't be fought in the operating room. But in the truth, she had spent years trying to outrun. The hallway filled before the doors even opened. Boots first, then uniforms, then the quiet, suffocating presence of people who didn't come to ask questions. They came to contain outcomes. The rookie nurse stood at the foot of the operating table, hands folded loosely in front of her. Shoulders relaxed in a way that had nothing to do with calm and everything to do with control. The SEAL on the table was alive now, barely, but his vitals were holding. The canine sat beside him again, posture locked, eyes alert, but no longer aggressive. The watch had resumed. One of the men with the red tabbed folder stepped forward. "We are transferring custody." "No," the nurse said. The word wasn't loud. "It didn't need to be," the man blinked, not used to resistance from someone in scrubs. "Excuse me. If you move him now," she continued evenly, "he dies in the elevator. His pressure won't hold. His airway will collapse and the dog will react." The man glanced at the commander. The commander didn't look back. "She's right," he said. The folder snapped shut. "Sir, this is above." "I know exactly where this sits," the commander replied. "And so do you." A long silence followed. Not tense, measured. The kind of pause that meant decisions were being made several levels higher than the room they were standing in. The nurse exhaled slowly. This was the moment she'd been running from. Not the gunfire, not the screaming, not even the dog. This being seen. The commander turned to her, voice lower now. "They reopened your file." Her fingers twitched once, then stilled. "Most of it's still blacked out," he went on. "But what isn't? It explains a lot." She didn't ask what he'd read. She already knew. A unit without names. A medic known only by a number. A night operation that went wrong in ways reports couldn't capture. "You were supposed to be dead," he said quietly. "I was," she replied, "just not in the way they meant." Behind them, the canine stood suddenly, head snapping up. The nurse followed his gaze instinctively. The SEAL's fingers moved, barely, but unmistakably. She was at his side in an instant. "Stay with me," she said softly. "You're safe." His eyes fluttered open. Confusion, pain, recognition. Then panic surged. His chest heaved, his breathing spiked, his muscles tensed like he was bracing for impact that never came. The canine pressed close, whining low, grounding him. "You're inside," the nurse said firmly. "Hose, you made it back." The SEAL's eyes locked onto her hand. The tattoo understanding flickered through the fog. "7, he rasped. She nodded. "That's right." The room froze. One of the men from command muttered, "Jesus." The SEAL swallowed hard. They told us, you were gone. She held his gaze. They were wrong. A weak breath escaped him. Half laugh, half disbelief. Figures, he whispered. You were always hard to kill. She almost smiled. Almost. The commander cleared his throat. He needs to stay here. 24 hours minimum. That's unacceptable. One of the suits snapped. Then accept this, the commander shot back. If he dies under your watch after she warned you, it's on you. Another silence. Finally, a curt nod. Fine, the man said. But she comes with us after. The nurse didn't react. She already knew the cost. Hours passed. The adrenaline faded. The hospital returned to its usual rhythm, unaware of how close it had come to becoming a battlefield. The SEAL stabilized fully just before dawn. When the sun began to creep through the high windows, the K9 finally lay down for real, resting his head on his paws. Duty fulfilled. The commander approached the nurse one last time. They want you back, he said quietly. Officially, she looked at the dog, at the SEAL at the place she'd chosen because it was supposed to be ordinary. I can't, she said. Why? Because if I go back, she answered, I stop being useful here, and here people still need saving. He studied her for a long moment. Then, without ceremony, he straightened and saluted. Not sharply, not for show. A small private acknowledgement. For what it's worth, he said, we never forgot what you did. She nodded. I didn't do it for that. As the sun rose higher, the men in uniforms left. The black SUVs rolled away. The hospital exhaled. The nurse pulled on a fresh pair of gloves. Another shift awaited. Another set of vitals to check. Another patient who didn't know or need to know who she used to be. As she stepped back into the hallway, an older nurse caught her arm. You okay? She asked gently. The rookie nurse considered the question, then nodded. Yeah. The K9 lifted his head as she passed, tail thumping once against the floor.